First match is getting set and getting ready to get underway. Jarla taking on Bozzzton in this one, and I've gotten word that we're going to be going pretty quickly. They're rearing and ready to go. And so, Saddle, we got to talk about the protects and the bans that are happening in this one, because with Bozzzton having Warlock in his deck, I would have anticipated Druid being one of the targets for that deck.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly a talking point where if you're expecting a bunch of Quest Druid to come into the metagame, you then want to focus on more board-based decks that can punish them for whiffing those early turns as they're having to float mana and complete the quest. But Warlock is an extremely unpopular deck in general. Bozzzton, the only person in this entire region that's bringing it. For his part, he chose to protect his rogue, and his warrior is being banned out. I think Druid will be a popular ban where available. Of course, it's hard to say what will be popular because the player protecting has the first shot. They get to choose which deck they protect, and I think Druid might also be a popular protect in certain series as well. But nevertheless, we are getting started. No Warlock coming out early from Bozzzton. He is going to start out with that Highlander Hunter. Jarla with his warrior still allowed in the series, having been protected. He is going to run it out. Of course, Jarla, well regarded as one of the best control players in the game right now.
Indeed. The control warrior decks have swapped up a little bit this week as well. I've seen a lot of weapons projects creep into the lists. And I was kind of curious about this yesterday, exactly why it was in here. But it does make a bit of sense to me with as many rogues floating around as you would expect. That weapons project could be another necessity for warrior decks if they want to get the job done.
Yeah, we also saw a non-zero amount of Holy Wrath Paladins last week as well, which you could argue whether you'd expect to see that this week with the nerfs, but having weapons project against potential True Silvers coming through is kind of a big deal as well.
That's a good point to make.
Yeah,
that swings around 4 of that health.
You get 4, yeah. If they play 1 True Silver Swing it, then you only get 4, because obviously they get the 6 damage that you gain from the 6 armor back from the weapon that you give them, but that 4 can make all the difference. We saw multiple games last week where that 4 would have made all the difference. I think primarily you're looking at, big rogue weapons. Deadly Poison is in the metagame right now alongside Hook Scimitar, so that suddenly makes Weapon Project incredibly powerful.
Did you notice Bozzzton had a Hunter's Pack in his Highlander Hunter this week?
I did, yeah.
Excellent choice.
Smug face to my right from Admirable.
Well, it's an excellent choice.
Yeah.
This is really well done. So Bozzzton last week, I had some criticism of the deck list for the simple sake that it didn't have enough card generation. Hunter right now is a very powerful deck, but it really lacks on card generation prospects. That single Hunter's Pack of the deck, when you combine it with Zul'jin, means that you obtain 5 additional cards from your list at some point, and that is a massive deal. We saw Bozzzton squeak it out by using a very aggressive Zul'jin simply for tempo, and that was enough to get the job done. But if he would have been able to have Hunter's Pack in that, I think he wouldn't be under the stress of having to have that kind of turn. And the more I watch it, the more I like it. I think Hunter's Pack is just a good card in this deck. Also, no mage. You don't have to be quite so aggressive, I don't think.
Yeah, I think that's a very good point as well. I made that point when we were looking earlier at the Druid, where when Luna's Pocket Galaxy isn't a force in the metagame, you can afford to just slow down your deck a little bit. The counterpoint to that, though, is to say that kind of the Quest Druids have come in to replace the mages, in which case that's another deck that you do want to be very aggressive against and get off to very fast starts consistently.
I am kind of curious about the matchup. I haven't had a ton of time this week to practice everything, and Highlander Hunter continues to be one of the decks that I have the least amount of experience on, because it's just such a high variation of deck. Your game plan is going to be pretty different in a lot of situations.
Right.
And so versus Druid in particular, I'm curious how it lines up. Do you need to be aggressive, or can you actually have staying power against them?
I've generally found that I'd rather be on the Druid side of that equation. It's just the lack of consistency in the Hunter start means that Druid can normally get through, on average, fairly unscathed through that quest proceedings. And then any outright aggressive pushes, they can get shut down by Ferocious Howl, and by massive healing. And it's hard for them to even compete on board, obviously, when those choose one effects are doubled up. So I feel like Druid has it checked from most angles, unless the Hunter gets off to a very, very fast start.
Jarla faced with his first tough turn of the game here. And I imagine we're going to be landing on Harrison Jones. Jarla is certainly a player that will take time to think about as many different iterations as he can and try to plan out future turns while he has obvious turns like this one. I think this is a fairly... Oh, you might be going with Warpath instead.
Yeah,
wow.
I don't necessarily think it's as obvious as you're suggesting, especially because of the information he's still seeking from that secret. I do agree with you that on the surface, like, Weapons Project Harrison is just such a game-winning combination. You can argue, like, keeping Weapons Project Harrison in combination in most matchups was good enough, at least when Dr. Boom Mad Genius was 7, at least when we were playing in that metagame, that was, all, like, just drawing that amount of resources in any matchup almost always got you there. So it is a go-to default play a lot of the time. But I think the Warpath is very justifiable there in Jarla's position.
Bozzzton has shown some unwillingness to attack with the weapon as well, favoring it to have some potential board presence. I think with the Gladiators Longbow and Siamat and with Dino Tamer Brand, it's hard for the Longbow to come down in a lot of these situations. And his curve is pretty set in stone. It's
just another good reason, not necessarily to Harrison away this 2-charge weapon, is that Jarla knows there is a random hunter weapon in Bozzzton's hand right now. And like that, there really aren't that many options. So a lot of the time, it's an Eaglehorn bow, which he can get huge value off with the secrets in his deck that you really want to destroy, or it's a Gladiator's Longbow, which you really don't want him to get huge value off.
Hatchet, Eaglehorn bow, and Gladiator's Longbow. Those are your 3 options.
Desert Spit. You did that. You did that
last
week as
well.
well.
How do I forget about that? I never see it. I never see it from a Hunter's pack.
Yeah.
You see what I'm talking about with the different variations from Hunter?
Yeah.
There's so many of them. At least 4 different ones from Hunter's pack alone.
So Jarla back in a pretty similar spot.
He's got a Harrison here, right? Yeah.
That belongs in a museum.
I don't know what that weapon's called. It's a pretty generic name for a weapon. Harrison, I don't think it belongs in a museum, but, your heart's in the right place. Curate that history.
It's not going to generate a lot of foot traffic. Just generic 2-3 weapon.
Did you hear the weapons projects at the new exhibit today?
We need to get our tickets now. Sorry, they're sold out. You're going to have to get them on the resale market. The demand's just too high.
History. Yeah.
I didn't fully crystallize the point when we were talking about the previous turn as well, but I mentioned he's still seeking information on that secret, and I think it's another reason why Harrison Jones really wasn't all that attractive. He's like, well, that's a snipe some of the time. I don't really just want to be playing my Harrison Jones into the snipe and just losing a bunch of board tempo.
Yeah, because your options on that previous turn with Hyena Alpha were to take 7 damage and then follow up with Warpath, or to take 3 damage now in Warpath and potentially get the payoff of it being a snake trap. Or it, not being a snipe and Harrison actually sticking to the board as a threat.
Right.
For Bozzzton,
and then in the world where
snags the worst option.
He's upset. Quite rightly so.
It keeps happening. Bozzzton has the worst luck with things.
Oh yeah?
Things that determine board outcomes.
Oh yeah?
I feel like Bozzzton has had the worst luck across Europe Grandmasters.
You putting that out there?
I'm putting that out there.
All right.
Now I'm going to add some caveat to that. I don't think Bozzzton has been the best exceptional player, but I do think that he has been put in the toughest spots due to outcomes that are outside of his control.
Okay. I mean, I guess if you're saying that he hasn't been the absolute top tier in terms of play, and he's been getting unlucky, then 1-1's a pretty reasonable record for him to be at.
I'm even referring to that in Season 1. His Season 1 did not end spectacularly by any stretch of the means.
Sure.
But it was just time after time he kept getting put in the toughest positions possible. Like, at a certain point, that starts to affect your mentality. Like, I've been playing cards my whole life, and there are times when enough bad stuff happens that I, start to question myself and all the practice I've done. I'm like, maybe I am wrong. Maybe I do need to change some things. Like, I see Bozzzton continue to react to these kinds of situations, and rightfully so. I think it's been really tough from his side.
Yep.
I mean, that Elysiana was by far the worst thing that could have happened.
Particularly because of the timing as well, and I think Jarla was right here to kind of exacerbate the problem. Turn 7, of course, big turn for Highlander Hunter because of Dino Tamer Bran. So Jarla's like, you know what? You want to play Dino Tamer there? It's already pretty terrible because I have a 7-1 in play, but I'm going to put this irritating Taunt minion in the way at the same time, also protecting from Spring Paws in that position. Bozzzton has about the best response he can have, which is Unleash the Beast plus the Spring Paw. Yeah. But still, that 7-1 is a huge, huge deal for Jarla.
Pretty stacked hand for Bozzzton, though. Like, I do think he's going to get out of this one because his hand is just so big.
Right. Yeah, Jarla's going to have to find some way of keeping up tempo for the next few turns. If he can maintain significant pressure and significant tempo, you essentially devalue your opponent's hand when you do that because they have to use their resources more liberally when they are under pressure. So that can be very, very key for kind of exhausting some of the value that is in this hand for Bozzzton.
The top end.
Yes. But Jarla has a couple of plays to be able to do that for a turn or two, but he is eventually just going to default back to drawing Control Warrior things, which is just generic removal pieces. At that point, Bozzzton might just be able to get back on top and exhaust those resources.
With 2 Restless Mummies in hand, I think Jarla's got some fight left in him. So to me, this sounds like a race to the big end game. You know, for Bozzzton, obviously, we're looking at Zul'jin, and for Jarla, we're looking at Dr. Boom Mad Genius. Yeah. First player to find one of those, I think, will take an advantage. But I don't think it's necessarily like super substantial, except for Bozzzton. I feel like if Bozzzton finds his end game right now, it's a lot better than if Jarla does. For Jarla, I think it's necessary. For Bozzzton, I think it's a closer. Perhaps already starting to account for the hand space on that as well, just spending the mana to get the Spring Paw out. You know, you're looking at Zephyrus plus a 7 next turn.
Yep.
Zephyrus is going to add another card to hand. Right now, the Zul'jin would have Hunter's Pack and have an Unleash the Beast in it. That's 4 extra cards you're getting in hand.
Yeah, if Zephyrus is on the table next turn. Might not be. But it's very similar if he just chooses to go Dinotamer Brand Rat Trap or Dinotamer Brand Hero Power.
Zephyrus will almost always offer the Black Knight in this situation. And since that Spring Paw didn't connect, that means the Gladiators Longbow is off the table. That's something I think that we could have looked at too. And you know, talking about the picture-perfect play from Bozzzton, if he just simply attacks with that Spring Paw there, that Gladiator's Longbow is set up to kill his Tomb Ward.
That is very true. That is a very, very good point. Same with Unleash the Beast as well, if he wants to go down that route for whatever reason.
Yeah, I mean, 2 different options to do that with. Fork on.
As you say, Black Knight is an option if he does want the tempo swing here.
Problem is staring at that 3/1 mummy.
Yep.
No tomb can hold him.
Imagine being held by a tomb.
He tells you twice.
Yeah.
Unless you silence him, then he shuts up.
I move quickly.
Biggest tempo.
You'll find me whatever the action is.
King Crush set up to be checked here. You do get a 2/4 out of the deal, though. Dinotamer Brand's a heck of a card. Just 7 mana, big thing and little thing? That's not fair. I've been playing some Wild, as you know I do.
Can you explain to me why in the Dinotamer Brand art he's clearly taming an extremely different dino from King Crush, which is the one that he ends up summoning?
Well,
that confuses me.
This is the, you know, perhaps it's like from his early days or something. It looks pretty young and snappy in that picture. It looks like a young Bran.
Okay.
Got to tame the other dinosaurs first. You can't just go straight for King Crush. This is his final form, the King Crush one.
So wait, the whole of Hearthstone is played out in a weird time vortex where things from different eras overlap? Or?
It seems that, I mean, is it in chronological order? Like, did we come from the streets of Gadgetzan like a few years back and just suddenly we land back here with the League of Explorers? I think the League of Explorers timeline is going chronological, yeah.
Okay.
I wanted to get back to my Wild Point and go the brand into brand. It's so cool. Still nice search for Bozzzton, where Jarla's finally starting to gas out.
Well, you saw Bozzzton there just kind of default to the board clear there. He just moused over the 2 cards. Yep, that's what he's going for.
It's the right call. You got the gas to do it. Do it. Just look at the difference that Hunter's Pack has made in this game. Like how many extra resources it's provided.
Yep. Oh, right as the second Tomb Warden was played.
Yeah, that's a feels bad. That's kind of, I think, one of the biggest benefits that Highlander Hunter has against Warrior, though, is your boards aren't really brawl boards, so your opponent has to fight for tempo.
Right.
They have to fight for tempo. Sometimes stuff like this happens. Like, this is such a huge unseen payoff from Bozzzton's position. It's hard to know how much work you did on Tomb Wardens. Instead, you're kind of looking down like, God, 2 Tomb Wardens. I've had to spend a lot of stuff doing this.
Yep. It's kind of the point I made earlier, though, is that if Bozzzton can just play on the defensive for a turn or two, Jarla is going to start drawing more reactive cards. We saw since then he's picked up that second Brawl and an Eternium Rover, which is a pretty reactive card at this point in the game anyway. You want to be using it with Dr. Boom Mad Genius, using it as a base for magnetic minions to rush out and all that malarkey, but...
Malarkey?
Malarkey, yeah.
All right. I don't know if it's malarkey. Seems pretty reasonable to me.
What, Dr. Boom Mad Genius? Seems reasonable.
Well, no, the rushing them and the magnetic as base. Like, that's...
Okay.
Yeah. Tyrion the Black Knight and Argent Protector.
Why did he show up? Hang on, what's on the board right now?
It gave you 2 such good options that you had to go with a bad one, I guess.
Zephyrus, you're a weird dude sometimes.
Yeah, but you know what? He loves Tyrion as much as I do, and that's what I really care about. Oh, and Jarla draws Dr. Boom. This is necessary timing if Jarla is going to be in this game. 18 cards into the deck. He finally finds it.
Yep.
And he's taken 9 before he gets to do anything. You don't get to hero power Dr. Boom anymore. That is such a big deal.
Yep. If you want to just, surface level it, that is the biggest change in my mind, is that you never get that immediate action. Dr. Boom Mad Genius almost always takes up your entire turn. It means you cannot react to the board state the turn you play it, which means you can kind of set up power spikes against it more consistently. Of course, it just comes down much later in the game, which means you have a greater time to gain an advantage before it appears.
Yeah, you want to use that hero power, you save that coin.
I will say, however, that I was one of the people that said, maybe Dr. Boom Mad Genius, like just changing the mana cost isn't the best way to go about it, because what it does for Control Warrior is kind of just the effect that the card has. It just allows you to build the rest of the deck. You get to play 4 1-drops in your deck just because you have Dr. Boom Mad Genius as the infinite engine. That's still true, and it does not surprise me that we're still seeing Control Warriors be the force that it is, even with 9 mana Dr. Boom. But spots like this, you can see it does make a difference in the right matchup.
Still Russian snip snaps, though.
Oh, yeah.
You can also see, as part of the benefit of weapons projects being included in a lot of these warrior decks, is the Zephyrus Tyrion interaction. Being able to kill a Tyrion and then weapons project the Ashbringer, very real thing.
Yes.
That will mostly take place, I think, versus Holy Wrath Paladin.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, it is a go-to option, as we learned last week, to look for Tyrion for that extra 15 points of damage, because we were in a very weapon removal light metagame. So we were talking about the impact that Weapons Project can have on True Silver, just reducing the output by 4. If you hit it on Ashbringer, that is a much, much bigger swing in your favor. Tricky turn here for Jarla, because he has to consider the implications of Rat Trap as he's trying to deal with this board state.
It's kind of a curious turn.
He's handing over the rat here. Yep.
Yeah, that's interesting to me. So you isolate a 6/6, which goes to 6/5. You have Snip Snap in hand. You accept your 11 points of damage. I guess the thought could be that like Bozzzton is perhaps running out of gas himself. Like maybe that the Tyrion showed.
So I think he knows, even if it is Rat Trap there, which I'm not sure he had complete information that it was. I think there's several secrets that weren't tested for. If you know that Rat Trap is going to go off, like at some point you want to use triple Snip Snap for removal, right? So that's going to activate the Rat Trap in itself. And if he just left that board there and used triple Snip Snap, then the Rat Trap was going to come out. If he'd found some way to not spend 3 cards and just answer some of the board state, then next turn he tries to triple Snip Snap, there's still going to be a Rat Trap coming out. So it feels like no matter which way he sequenced the next 2 to 3 turns, there was going to be a rat that could attack at the end of one of them regardless.
Yeah, I was kind of curious about Eternia Rover, Double Warpath, and Brawl.
So as soon as he started casting the Warpath, I was like, okay, you can Eternium Rover, Double Warpath, Brawl. Like, I guess that makes sense. But if you would have done that, like you said, you would have Eternium Rovered first to get the armor.
Definitely leave Eternium. Snipe being a potential outcome because he knew the snipe was generated early on. Maybe that was a thought on his mind.
Sure.
Yeah, I think the bigger questions are definitely for Jarla right now. Bozzzton is just continuing to slam pressure on. Just biding his time. Doesn't want to use tracking to look for Zul'jin because that will limit the number of cards in deck as well. Ooh, Super Collider drawn.
Combination with the Blast Shield rolling around right on cue as well. It's potentially huge.
This would be a good time
Again,
for
big
a
old stack of
master
unknown
plan.
secrets that Jarla's thinking he has to deal with here. Snipe checked for. He's about to check freezing, which is one of the secrets in play.
We'll also check Snake.
Yep.
Which is exactly what Bozzzton said.
Problem now is that he has to take 6 with the Super Collider if he wants to go that way, but it looks like he's trying to set up a Brawl turn with 2 of them in hand.
Yeah, that makes sense to me as well. I mean, activate the Snake Trap and then Brawl. You know, that would be, to me, something that Bozzzton perhaps missed in this one. Those Brawls have been in hand for pretty much the entire game. Did you open yourself to that? Both mechs gone from Bozzzton's deck, so Ursatron simply a 3-3. And now, with Bozzzton's hand kind of dwindling down to medium threats, I feel like things are getting kind of tricky. He's also seen both Warpaths, so I think he is free to split these up if he'd like.
Yeah, I think if he pulls out the second Brawl here as well, then, or, second Brawl or the one Plague of Wrath, then he's just going to be rubbing his hands together, waiting for that Zul'jin to appear to then eventually end the game, so...
At that point, I think you could justify a tracking.
Yep.
You're like, you know what? They just don't have any AoE left. Let's get this underway.
It's kind of a, a timing window thing, right? Where if you see a second big AoE here, you're like, okay, I can wait and play this game out to fatigue,
Okay,
but then by the time, on average, if his hand doesn't have that last AoE on it, on average, by the time I draw my Zul'jin, he also draws that last AoE, and I'm potentially in trouble.
You know what? This is kind of a weird game, actually, because normally Bozzzton wouldn't have the option of going to fatigue because there would just be an Elysiana in Jarla's.
Yeah, no, that's a good point.
That's gone. Like that got hit by the Scorpion.
Yeah.
Whoa. I wonder if he's been thinking about that. I didn't even really think about that option until you said the word fatigue.
Oh, I love that fuse thing.
Like, now my mind's blown. Like, I always miss when players do this, and sometimes they plan this stuff, like 15 turns in advance.
This
Right.
would be a good time for
One
a
little
master
thing changes, and
plan.
they go, oh, wait a minute. We saw that historically with Purple being one of the best in the world at doing like that, but in Europe we saw it last season with Orange, talking about the secondary and tertiary plans, where sometimes the Cyclone Mages would remove Archmage Antonidas, and as Rogue you could go, wait a second, how do they kill me?
Yeah. It's definitely a little pet project for a lot of players. Purple, you mentioned, Firebat loves it as well, just fatiguing people with weird decks that you're not supposed to be able to fatigue people with.
Yeah. That's one of my favorite things to do as well.
Yeah. I used to try and tell people you could fatigue it's like Odd Warrior with Odd Paladin. It's like, no, you can't.
Oh, no, I watched Muzzy do it. Muzzy had an Uther in his deck, and I watched him do it.
Okay, well, yeah, sure, if you've got an Uther in
But
your...
there was one card. He put in one card, and that allowed him to fatigue a warrior.
Sure, if it's one card that doubles the size of your hero power, yeah, sure, fine.
Does it double it? It just kind of stacks up.
I guess, yeah, because you're Odd Warrior to begin with.
Yeah. The thing
Alright,
about it was
cool.
they had to kill the tutus. Like, they don't have any option anymore.
Right.
And Garrosh back then was, Scourgelord Garrosh was the Death Knight that Warriors used. So they had the Whirlwind Hero Power. And so they used their Hero Power to let you attack for 2 through the Whirlwind Hero Power. And I was like, Muzzy's a genius.
Okay. But I still do think plan A is kill him till he's dead for Bozzzton. I don't think you want to drag this one out to fatigue, because eventually, like, the resource, like, Zul'jin is a power spike, but if it's dealt with, then the resource generation, when it starts going to fatigue, is going to fall very firmly onto the hands of Dr. Boom, that genius.
It's like your deck is a catalyst to exhausting the AoE stuff from Jarla so that Zul'jin does something important.
So I think it's definitely fun to talk about the fatigue options here, and I think Bozzzton, just wanting to check all the bases, being the high-level player that he is, will be looking at what fatigue looks like for him. But I do still think plan A is just get him nice and dead from Bozzzton's side. Just keep playing minions, keep hitting him, look for that Zul'jin to end the game, try and bait out as much of the big AoE as you can before that point.
I mean, that's really the story of the game, is how can you deliver enough pressure to force big tools from Jarla so that Zul'jin closes.
Right. Eats the snipe now with the snip snap. 2 and 3 potentially come down. Remaining secret is pressure plate. Snip snap's a real good card.
Oh, is it?
Yeah. You just start the turn like, wow, that's a really awkward board state to deal with. Nope, one card, all gone, through a secret. Like, one of those snip snaps got sniped, and it still just smoked that entire board state.
Jarla's dying, though. He's at 13.
Yep.
Okay, Snip Snap can be as good as a card as you want. It doesn't stop burn damage.
It doesn't. There is an Eternium Rover in hand for Jarla that can try and pick up some defense. There is a Tomb Warden, which stops some of that Eaglehorn bow damage going through, and there is a chance to roll that Blast Shield as well for Jarla.
Bozzzton still has Kill Command in the deck?
Yep. Spellbreaker in hand as well, which can help him push through any damage that he needs to.
Not playing the crazy Leroy version that I've seen of this deck.
I wonder.
I mean, Bozzzton has a tremendous amount of chance to win next turn.
Yes, he does. Especially with that tracking in hand. If he ever decides, I need one turn to just, you know, pull the switch, one card can be lethal this turn, he can go for it. I don't think there's much to this turn apart from just load up the damage, swing it all face. Bozzzton agrees. I also agree with not using the tracking this turn.
Shield.
Oh, the shield block.
So necessary for Jarla, but at the same time, he's looking at this Eaglehorn bow, knowing that's the pressure, and Tomb Warden starts to look appealing in that spot. Like, I think Jarla might actually be getting tempoed at the late stage.
It's true. If he Tomb Wardens here, does he ever die? I don't think so, right?
I think that sometimes you can die, but it requires some pretty crazy stuff.
I'm not sure how it happens.
Your opponent would have to have held a card that they would not hold.
This would be a good time.
Does that make
for
sense?
A master
Like,
plan.
Bozzzton would have to have an animal companion in hand here, I think.
Sure. Even then, does that kill you?
It can. You know, if it rolls Huffer, if his hand is exactly like Kill Command, Animal Companion, and Spellbreaker, oh, you just have the mana for it.
Then you can't hear about it.
Correct.
I don't think you ever die through this play.
Yeah,
it would have to be Life Drinker Kill Command, and the Life Drinker is already gone.
And Bozzzton, I think, seeing not a Blast Shield there, is very interested in trying to set up a Kill Command lethal.
Yeah.
And so I think that's the direction that he's ultimately going to land on with this spot, is he's going to try to set up damage to be lethal, and he's going to run into Jarla having shield block in hand. Gotta take Zul'jin, no option.
Does Unleash ever set up more lethal outs for you? Does Animal Companion ever set up more lethal outs for you? You don't have a beast for Kill Command right now.
There's no way you're not taking that Zul'jin.
I mean, I agree, but
Yeah.
I've got to ask the question. It's kind of my job. I've got to ask the question.
I appreciate you asking. You're being me this game, and I like that.
Yeah.
Now you know how it feels.
I don't like it.
That's why I do it.
I want to go back to being me.
I'm the casting martyr for you.
Okay.
I ask the dumb questions so that you don't have to.
Your magic shall not save
I'm curious if you ever use the kill command here not as pressure sometimes. Like, is the Zul'jin going to be enough? Like, can you kill command just fight for board or just throw the damage at face for mana efficiency?
Right. So I think Jarla has pretty good info on this being pressure plate at this point, which means if that shield block is getting cast, you probably want to throw like the Town Crier into it first to reduce the chances of that 3/6 biting the dust, or particularly the 3/6 taunt, but either of the 3/6s ideally.
Yeah, just trying to look at all the mana breakpoints, what matters.
Yeah. I really don't want that one dying to my pressure plate.
Yeah, I'm kind of thinking the same thing. I was thinking maybe the spring chicken.
Oh, okay. I like it. I respect it.
That is so smart.
Yeah, I'm here for this.
I mean, this is what I came for. To see Spring Rocket, which Admirable calls Spring Chicken. Now, why did he isolate the 2-1 off the board?
Unleash the Hounds.
Unleash the Hounds specifically?
He knows it's left, yeah. There's 3 cards left. If there's an Unleash in there, it's likely to be drawn. It's also an option that your opponent might have picked deliberately to set up lethal, as I was talking about last turn. Like Unleash the Hounds, kill command combinations.
It's big axe time. Ooh. If only we would have silenced the left 2, Morden.
There's the Hunter's Pack. Gives a Tundra Rhino. There you go, Admirable. You've now seen it.
I now know.
Don't make that mistake again.
I will not. Look at how many extra cards this is. Okay, so Bozzzton gets into fatigue now, and that sucks. But the thing about it is, he's definitely got the gas to close from here.
Do you think?
Yeah, I do think. That's why I said it.
It gave him a freaking Thundra Rhino.
Tundra!
No, Thundra.
Oh, I think you said Tundra. I was picturing like a lightning rhino. From the Tundra, of course. You know, the great lightning storms that happen on Tundras all the time.
The Thundra Plains Rhino. You have to press X periodically to dodge its attack. If you do it 200 times in a row, you get a really sick item. God, that's a weird reference. You have no idea what I'm talking about.
It just sounds like a generic RPG game reference.
You kind of got it, yeah.
Yeah. It's like when Frodan makes super specific anime references to me. I'm like, I have no idea what you're talking about, but that sounds accurate.
Yeah.
I've had it with these snakes.
Jarla's thinking Dynamatic to save the brawl here, which makes sense to me. Problem is that he wants the shield block, so yeah, do that first. Eat the pressure plate on the 1/1, so you can preserve a 3/4 on the board afterwards. Also seems to make sense.
Okay, then.
Yeah, I think he was considering using the Omega Assembly to do that.
Sure.
But the Machine Gun Dynamatic. Oh, Rat Trap as well. Oh, right. That activate? It was only, no, it was only two cards. It was Hero Power. Yeah. Yep. And that would be why you don't have Omega Assembly there.
Yep.
All right, the old 3/5 Eagle Horn Bow.
Whew.
So now for Bozzzton, the question is, how do you stick pressure? What's the maximum amount of damage you can output? That's it.
And how do you do it in a limited number of turns as well? Because you do very much have a limited number of turns here with the fatigue hitting.
Yeah, so the next 3 turns he'll take 9 damage, and then he's loaded up for a hit of fatigue for 5.
Yep.
That would be 14, and then a hit of fatigue for 6, so that's 20. So the maximum number of turns he has, 4 more turns. He has to deliver lethal in 4 turns.
Jarla gets the very bad news that that high main was not tracked over either time.
Yeah, the mana stuff here is weird too. Can't Devastator and use Plague of Wrath efficiently.
No.
Okay, then.
Fright and Flunky. That is a sight for sore eyes, I think. But just think about the Rat Trap again still, too.
Yep. If he plays Fright and Flunky here to find himself something just to stall, and he plays that, then that's activating Rat Trap. It'll be the third card.
Omega Assembly to start. Play a 2-cost card. Use the Omega Devastator.
Okay,
Rush
then.
that into the ooze. You leave your opponent with a 6-5.
With a high main, yeah. I'm not seeing anything better, though, I have to agree.
Jarla's got different plans. This does technically cut more damage. Like, you don't have to activate Rat Trap.
I guess if you're intending not to deal with not to activate Rat Trap for the entire game, then you can safely afford to ignore it. And the entire game, as we mentioned, is only 3 or 4 turns.
That's
point.
lethal. Tundra Rhino. Fundra Rhino. Yeah, just Tundra Rhino.
Yeah.
And Jarla, you saw the shake of the head. Yep. Bozzzton gets it done again. He's been doing work on Control Warriors with this Highlander Hunter.
Yeah, he sure has. You can see this time he had a significantly easier job of it because of that Hunter's pack. The first one giving him a Gladiators Longbow, which did a huge amount of work. The second one giving that Tundra Rhino, which was game-ending. But it's not about what specific resources and what they did. It's just resources, generic things that you play and Warrior has to deal with. As you can see, it came right down to the end there. We kind of talked about it and hit the nail on the head. It's like, yeah, this is going to go down to the last resource versus the last resource, but it's not going to be a fatigue battle. Like, he still has to try and kill him because he is the one with a finite amount of resources in the deck. Zul'jin is just one big power spike. So just adding 3 to 6 extra things to your deck is just very, very powerful getting over that line against Warrior.
Yeah, Hunter's Pack is a heck of a card versus Warrior. Just so much extra stuff. And that's what you need. You just need extra stuff. That's kind of how they battle you, is they make extra stuff with like Omega Assembly and Dr. Boom.
I love stuff and things. They're just both so great. Yeah, kind of guys, you just amass things in your house that you just have no need for whatsoever. You that kind of person? No?
No. Is this what the peanut thing felt like earlier? Where I told you it was a legume and you just kind of stared at me?
How's that relatable? I just asked you a question.
But you said you like stuff and things. Then do you have a bunch of stuff in your house that you don't use?
You don't have just like figures, books that you never read, just things on shelves that are just there because they're items.
There's a lot of books I never read.
Stuff.
They're not my books.
Moving on.
Let's go to a break. When we come back, we're going to jump into the game 2 of this series of Jarla versus Bozzzton. Bozzzton out to a 1-0 lead. He's looking solid with Hunter so far in Grandmasters. Stay tuned.
Hello, my name is Kong Shu. My handle is Strifecrow. I think my original name was just like Strife. I think I just stole it from someone else that I saw online at the time when I was like 10. One of my favorite esports memory, it was like a dream hack. I ended up having like this like epic, like I don't even know how long, this game against Glinto. Eventually beat me in that game, but I kind of brought the mage to the tournament, not as like, say I thought it was like the best thing ever, but because I just wanted to like show people I could destroy everyone with my kind of like troll deck. The thing I'm most looking forward to in Grandmasters is kind of the dynamic, because I've never really had this like league kind of dynamic in the past. You have 2 matchups a week, and you can kind of like target them. You know, you can start making spreadsheets, see what they play, see what decks are good against the decks that they play. You can even kind of play some mind games like that. I think my play is unique in the sense that I'm very like technical. I don't play a lot on intuition as much. Like I really like to have my thoughts and game plans planned out and go from there. My personal goals this year is kind of to get back into Hearthstone. Because I took such a long break, I feel like I'm finally refreshed and ready to go. So that's one thing I'm just looking forward to get like that motivation back.
My name is Fei Liang. My handle is ETC. Before Hearthstone, I was playing World of Warcraft, and when I saw Elite Torrent Shift, and I think the card is pretty cool. I'm gonna try it. I think the style I like the most is combo deck because there are a lot of win conditions and there are a lot of ways you can win the game. My son plays Hearthstone sometimes.
Is he good?
He got rank 9. He likes Zoo list.
Are you going to teach your daughter to play Hearthstone?
Yeah, of course.
Do you think that she'll be better than him?
Probably yes, because I think my daughter is way smarter than my boy. Getting #1 in Grandmaster is gonna totally change my life. I think it proved myself and my kids are gonna be proud of me.
Welcome back to Hearthstone Grandmasters. We're in week number 2 in our first match of the day. I'm Nathan. That's Admirable Zamora. I'm joined by Simon Sottle Welch. And Sottle, we're seeing Bozzzton off to a 1-0 lead with his Highlander Hunter over Jarla's Warrior. And for game number 2, Jarla's sticking on this Warrior. Said, let's run it back. Let's get the job done. And so what is Bozzzton coming to battle with?
Sounds like he is going to be queuing up his Rogue, his very aggressive form of Rogue as well, as he's got a lot of damage thrown in there, or actually, well, I mean, we could say a decent amount of damage. It's not the full hooked scimitar version that we've seen, and we actually looked at it last week and said, maybe that second copy of Eviscerate needs to be in there. Maybe when you throw out that Myra's, you need to be consistently banking damage into your hand. It does feature double Deadly Poison, does feature double South Sea Deckhand. Waggle picks, of course, are in there as well, so it has still got a huge amount of damage built up. But this is kind of a classic matchup in my regard. We've seen these kind of vendetta-based tempo rogues go up against warriors on numerous occasions throughout Season 1 of Grandmasters, where players had the ability to kind of tech their decks with secondary and tertiary decks for those matchups. And there was an awful lot of disagreement, Admirable, as to who was favored on which side and which techs were important and how you were supposed to build your secondary and tertiary decks. None of that stuff to worry about this time. Just straight up vanilla primary, more ladder-style decks clashing heads with each other.
Yeah, and I am willing to admit that I was incorrect. Warrior was favored.
Everyone, calendars out. Mark the date.
Hey, I admit I'm wrong. I'm just usually not wrong.
It's just always generic cop-out to people who don't admit that they're wrong.
Well, yeah, again, it's the generic cop-out for people. We talked about this yesterday as well. It was, you made a generalization about something. I was like, yeah, but I do that well. That's more the reborn you're looking for.
Is that what I called you, a backseater? Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah. So called me a backseat gamer.
Admirable was like, when I play, I can't really like verbalize what I'm thinking very well, but if I watch someone else play, I can tell them what to do.
No.
Whoa!
That is
So you just literally described being a backseat gamer.
absolutely not. I said, when I am sitting in the chair playing, when I have my hand on the mouse, it's very difficult for me to verbalize my thoughts. If I'm watching a game, it's very easy for me to discuss what's happening.
Sure.
Instead of the word discuss, I said to talk about what's happening.
You keep believing that's what you said.
Oh, that is exactly what I said. And then you called me a backseat gamer. And I said, yeah. And then I went, wait a minute. No, I'm good at what I'm doing.
Rogue versus Warrior.
I want to talk about the Generous Mummy versus the Reborn Mummy thing real quick. You know, kind of talking about 3-drops and it being potential
Yeah.
and important. I mean, this spot right here, I feel like any 3-drop is necessary.
Do we have to go back down that
It's
rabbit
just
hole again?
It's just 3-drop. Importance of 3-drop. That's a miserable turn.
It is. And I agree that any generic 3-drop there would have been fantastic, but Generous Mummy doesn't fit the bill of generic 3-drop to me.
Okay. So that's a mega draw.
Yes, it is. That could, in fact, just be a game-ending draw.
Wow. There's some lists of Rogue this week that have Mountain Giant. But I think Edwin Van Cleef is very nicely playing that role right now. That's going to take 2 turns to kill. And that means it's going to take all of Jarla's resources, and it's going to deal 8 damage.
Yeah, and it's 2 turns at least as well. The one saving grace, perhaps, for Jarla is that having just seen that backstab get used by Bozzdton for very little effect, just very little board effect, taking care of a 1-1. It did add 2-2 to the Edwin. Let me just make sure I'm being perfectly clear.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure. You saw my head whip around when you said that, right?
Yeah. Which makes me curious about it, the Ziliax being used here immediately as the coin option, as opposed to the Harrison Jones being used to take care of the deadly poison weapon.
Well, if you use the Harrison Jones, I think that's how your nose gets open. To the Harrison, I'm sorry, to Edwin connecting for 16, is you didn't chip at the Edwin this turn. Like, if you don't use either Restless Mummy off the Town Crier or the Ziliax here, there's a chance the Harrison gets removed, and you just take 16 from Edwin instead.
All right, I can see that.
You know, it's pretty rare that I'm ever going to advocate for rocket boots.
Why are you going to advocate for it here?
I think that your minions acting as generic removal could be an okay thing.
Okay,
Too soon.
I can see it. To me, I looked at 3 cards there and said it's 3 things that just draw a card and do very little else. So I think Rocket Boots is the most effective thing.
Bozzdton chose to use the South Sea Deckhand there as the removal because if he attacks with the weapon, he cannot attack with South Sea Deckhand afterwards.
Correct.
So it's not in the sequence. I have made that mistake far too many times.
So you see the Restless Mummy coming in clutch, as you mentioned. Does still have that Harrison Jones now preserved for if he needs to prevent Waggle Pig damage coming through, which could be very clutch as well.
Yeah, Bozzdton is in a great spot right now. This is a lot of damage that's going to connect. Like, Jarla is going to have to Warpath on the following turn. And so for Bozzdton, it's just how do you best set up against Warpath?
I wonder.
That's the card that's on your mind.
Yeah. He is still a few points short in terms of damage that he needs to get through over the coming turns. And pretty soon, Tomb Wardens are going to start coming into play. Waggle Pick isn't really an out for him. If he draws Waggle Pick, he needs to play it in a situation where, you know, Harrison Jones is too expensive for Jarla to just dedicate his whole turn to playing. Otherwise, that could just be game losing.
Yeah, you know, I said I said he was in a fantastic spot, and I need to clarify that a couple ways. Number one, he does not have Shadow Step in the deck, so I actually want to rescind my statement. I forgot that he doesn't have Shadow Step. That greatly cuts into your ability to close the game. And so for Bozzzton here, I think that this is enough to force a Warpath, so his hope is to redevelop with Pharaoh Cat and then close the game with Leroy. I think that that's way difficult when you do not have Shadow Step in your deck, because Bozzzton's hitting 8 mana before Jarla is, and he's not going to have an opportunity to Shadow Step a Leroy ever. Yeah, he can't draw that. So,
Evil Miscreant into Lackey, into Shadow Step. Well, there's some damage.
So he needs a cheap Reborn. That's not a cheap Reborn. So let's draw a card from Rocket Boots, looking for SI7 Agent, I imagine. Okay. And so now, the question comes on the Poison. Poison can just be simply used next turn, so this threatens lethal from hand for Bozzzton, and that means Jarla is going into Armageddillo. And that, I think, might be enough to push Bozzzton out of the game. Wow.
What now?
Again, Jarla just considering similar spots as he was in the previous games. It's like, you know, how often do I just straight up die through playing Armageddillo here? And the answer is, in this case, I believe sometimes. There's a single copy of Sap in Bozzzton's deck, which he is yet to draw. Even then, Sap plus Leroy is only 10. There'll be no mana available to dagger after that.
Yeah, I think Eviscerate would have been the card that Bozzzton was looking for, so now I'm thinking Myra's Unstable Element.
Yep.
So that means Henge Clan Thug with the Deadly Poison, and that means an unhappy Bozzzton next turn. He saw that laser go off.
And with the Ziliax already gone, he knows it's almost certain that Tomb Wardens are in his future.
Whoa, it could be Frightened Flunky, the lone copy of it.
It could. It could also be a random taunt mech that came off that Omega assembly.
Yeah, but it's not.
It's not.
Yeah.
It's two Tomb Wardens. 2 of them. Not just one. 2 of them. Count them. 1, 2, 2 Tomb Wardens.
You think it's 2 Tomb Wardens, but that's actually 4 Tomb Wardens, because 1 Tomb Warden makes 2 Tomb Wardens, and 2 Tomb Wardens make 4 Tomb Wardens. Thus, 1 laser equals 4 Tomb Wardens. So even going back to look at the Shadow Step, you would see the important role that Armageddillo would have played in this game. Shutting off the potential even for something as crazy as that. So Bozzzton says, you know what? I gotta fight harder for board. I know that I'm in for a longer fight here. And with Armageddillo living for a turn, it means the second Tomb Warden gets even bigger.
I think the window for Bozzzton is just about slammed shut.
What now?
It's just still not good enough.
I don't want to sap any of these.
Nope. It's about the best card remaining in Bozzzton's deck in terms of setting up ways to push these last points of damage through, but the style of the minions just means that if you don't kill them immediately after the sap, they're just going to come back down and punish you so much harder, and it's hard to imagine a way that Bozzzton gets over the line from this point.
It's hard for me to dig up random outcomes from Henge Clan Burglar and stuff. Because not only do you have to draw that, you have to find the right option, you have to have the time to play it, and you have to have stuff left to push with afterwards.
Yep. Same thing with, you know, Evil Miscreant into the Spell Lackey. You just have to have time for that to be your entire turn.
My first thought was Henge Clan Burglar into Twisting Nether. with Jarla overcommitting.
Sure.
So if that's the case, buy time. Bozzzton, I think, is hoping to see Warpath here and then to rip Eviscerate, which is really smart. I think he actually did find a way to perhaps win if Jarla does the worst turn that he can make.
Yeah, it's about as good a plan as I can think of. Jarla, though, having drawn the Eternium Rover, is free to make that Warpath play if he wants to and still be out of range.
Exactly.
But without that, the Warpath could have been bait. But I think because Jarla is...
Whoa, 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 whoa.
What?
Is he doing the Warpath turn? Because if you do that, then I guess he just wanted to absorb all 3 shots then? Oh, okay. I was thinking 2-path, Eternium Rover, 2-path.
Oh, I see. Yeah, yeah.
Just want the armor.
I think it's...
Who cares about the 1-1?
Yeah.
Smart. Bozzzton's face, I think, is very telling of this too, where he's like, wow, he even drew the counter to my game plan, which was already a top deck game plan anyway. But you know what? Hats off to Bozzzton for that one. That was a really smart turn.
Yeah, it was. It's the card that you always think is going to give you hope, but...
Well, he was thinking about Leroy before the Myras.
Yeah.
Interesting mix of stuff. Wow, there's a lot to think about.
There is, yeah.
He does not have much time left.
It's worth knowing as well, as far as Bozzzton knows, he just has to deal with the 1/3/6 copy of Tomb Warden that he sapped on the previous turn. That's all the information he actually has. So that's probably the world he's going to choose to plan for.
Yeah, unaware of the 7/10 Tomb Warden.
Yeah.
Choose soon. So many options.
Who comes there?
2 biggest chip base.
Yeah, I was considering the merits of playing Miscreant that turn instead. Again, we talked about it, right? Any random outs that you want to find off Ethereal Lackeys and so on, like, you have to have the mana invested in having done that already. I was considering whether that was an option on the previous turn, but I think defaulting back to just the biggest power play you can make makes the most sense.
I wonder.
Bozzzton doesn't have any way in hand to discount that Vendetta either, which is going to make fighting through 7/10 Tomb Wardens all the more tricky. You just start throwing everything in your hand at these Tomb Wardens and you're not getting through them.
I don't know, man.
Yeah.
That vicious Scrap Hound is... That's pretty much the initial target, too. That's another problem with this turn. You're like, oh, I got to kill that before I kill these Tomb Wardens.
Yep. And now, Bozzzton does have full perspective that even if he's able to somehow kill these 7/10s and still be representing a decent situation to set up lethal on the following turn, now he knows there is a Tomb Warden that he sapped also remaining in the hand for Jarla.
And yep, it's set in. It has come full circle now. Bozzzton is reacting to it. And he knows, I think, with that he's done.
Yep. I think this is 100% caster vision as well, but I think that with us knowing how dire his situation was, going for the spell lackeys on the previous turn was probably superior than just loading up stats.
Yeah, I think he's made the right calls this game, though.
I absolutely agree.
I think his calls in this game actually were particularly good. Like, especially the top deck, the Eviscerate setup. That's a hard one to visualize. And he'd set up a board that wanted to be Warpathed.
It was a better outer than that as well, because I think he had the Deadly Poison Dagger equipped at the time as well, so he actually would have just needed like South Sea Deckhand as well, would have been lethal without the 6 extra armor from the Eternium Rover on top, I think.
Yeah.
So he actually had multiple outs in that spot.
Oh, that means second Deadly Poison would have been good too.
What now?
Yeah. So
Evil Miscreant into Kobold Lackey.
seriously. So
That's a lot of outs.
in the face of a 4-path, he had 3 direct outs that turn.
Yeah, and I was, at the time, I was going to say before the Jarla just committed to the turn that I think Jarla would have recognized all of that as well. And if he hadn't have drawn the Eternium Rover, he wouldn't have got baited into playing the Warpath there. I think he would have just played Giant Tomb Warden and said go instead.
Yeah.
And it's the luxury of drawing that Eternium Rover that really changed that turn for Jarla. And he's like, well, I never die if I do this, so I might as well just kill all this stuff.
Jarla's still deep in the tank here. Yeah, this looks straightforward to me. Take your time, though. That's the Jarla MO. You have so much information after Myra's being cast. Why not take advantage of that? Bozzzton takes advantage of the bottom right in that instance. He knows that he is done in that game. And that means we're going on to game 3. Jarla, the check mark on the Warrior. It's now out of contention.
Yeah, rough spot for Bozzzton to be in at the end there. He was just sat waiting to concede to weapon removal, like he absolutely would have conceded as soon as he saw that he didn't get that waggle pick luxury. But Jarla well within his rights to take his time, consider all his options, check all the boxes, and now he has checked one very important box, which is the win column next to that Warrior.
Yeah, I just, that's a game of playing your outs. I think that's the prime example of how to do that. Set up an awkward turn for your opponent, visualize what they're likely to do, and go, okay, how do I win if that happens? Draw this extra damage.
Yep.
Straightforward.
To me, I still very much favor the more aggressive version of the deck. And I also favor Zephyrus for like the final kicker if you're going to be playing that kind of option. Like we see some people playing Nomi, we see some people playing Zephyrus. Bozzzton's actually playing neither of those things. But when we were talking that game about, there's 2 things. Generally, he wanted to draw damage. You do that more consistently with a more aggressive deck. Sometimes you need a way to scam yourself out of a position that seems unwinnable, which is what Zephyrus does. I think Zephyrus finds you weird situations to win more often than Nomi does in a lot of spots. So maybe it comes down to a question of deck building. I'm not a huge fan of like the old school tempo rogue in comparison to the more aggressive version. But Bozzzton sticking to his guns, even though it does seem like rogue is underperforming for him just a little bit so far.
So it's interesting that you said that you actually just prefer a different archetype of the rogue. You want to go full face damage.
Yes.
So that's what I pretty much always want to do when I play rogue.
Yes.
And I think that option is also quite strong right now as well. I think there's instances where tempo rogue makes a lot of sense. You do need the right matchups for that, though. Like, I feel like if you play against the wrong matchups with tempo rogue, that it's becoming, reminiscent of that last metagame where it's like the matchups were just paramount in that instance.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely more matchup dependent. You could argue that perhaps straight up damage is a worse plan on average against Warrior because you don't have kind of those chunky mid-game minions, but it's just overall the version I favor because it's more consistent at doing one thing very, very well, and that's just more like the game plan that I kind of like to execute.
Yeah, I think it's Warrior going to be kind of a tough spot either way. Let's go ahead and take a look at Jarla's Mage, which he'll be playing. We talked about how Mage was hit by the balance patch super hard, but this is just almost the exact same list.
Pretty much. Still just a big old pile of late game. Still Luna's Pocket Galaxy. The only thing now is that you cannot coin it out on 4. You can't just play a Zephyrus on 2, rip the Wild Growth, play Lunas, get on with your life. Like, you have to wait a lot longer before your deck becomes explosive. The longer you have to wait, the more of those minions on average you're going to draw, which means you're then sat with more clunky, overcosted minions in your hand.
Spending mana on a critical turn instead of on coin 4.
Yeah.
This is something I think to really think about, too, is like, if, talking about the ramp of this deck, how much slower it is. If you go Zephyrus into Wild Growth and you have coin, you still cannot play Luna's Pocket Galaxy.
Nope.
On that curve. That's crazy. So that's now, in my mind, like strictly an anti-control card.
And we have not even mentioned the Conjurer's Calling, which there you see nicely highlighted by Jarla drawing it in his opening hand, now costs 4.
That's the one I forgot to cash in.
You didn't disenchant it?
I couldn't remember what it was.
Oh, okay.
First thing I did was the Boom Galaxy Extra Arms. I was like, I'm missing one. I guess in my head it's just not a mage card.
What is it then?
I don't know. It's Conjurer's Calling.
Yeah, fair enough.
Kicking things off, Bozzzton's got a pretty decent looking start. Fairy Dragon always one of those cards that interests me.
Oh,
wow. So that is an interesting spot for this card now, because the 2 things that I look at are, number 1, you do have a sense of a curve here. So do you want to play Zephyrus right now?
Your wish is my suggestion.
Because all this is going to do is add to your curve now. Like, you're going to
Well,
redundancy.
it does more than that. It challenges a Fairy Dragon, which you will otherwise end up taking 9 to 12 damage with this hand a lot of the time. If your opponent plays Fairy Dragon next turn, you're really, really sad if you didn't play that Zephyrus.
Okay, so the Wild Growth does give me more perspective here. So what he's saying is that the curve is not necessarily good enough to get the job done. So I need to ramp my mana and do multiple things. And now with Twilight Drake drawn, that's not necessarily the case anymore. You're pretty interested in disrupting your opponent's turns, but if you're going to play the Twilight Drake, it means that if you play Stargazer Luna and it gets traded into by the SI and a dagger, you're not actually accomplishing your goal, and you're just spending turn 4 hero powering. Doesn't work.
Folks, who goes there?
So I don't know. I'm not convinced by that Zephyrus.
I wonder.
None of this looks good to me. Yeah, I think you gotta do that.
Yeah, I think the Rare Frost has to come down. It's just a matter of whether he wanted to draw cards there with Luna. Could have ended up like Luna double Rare Frosting that turn and asking for an answer from hand from Bozzzton, but you know,
Right in the Waggle Pick turn.
it's right into the Waggle Pick turn and right into the Henge Clan Burglar Vendetta turn as well. So I do end up favoring this as well.
And Boston's gonna have to be making some calls of his own pretty soon. I'm pretty in favor of Blink Fox.
Yeah, I think so too. But I think this kind of turn goes to show, or goes to illustrate the point I was kind of making in the gap between matches, where if you're playing the like straight up aggressive version, when I talk about just doing one thing really well, it often like crystallizes game plans for you. Where in this kind of spot, you just like, all right, sweet, I'm just going to start pushing damage because that's what my deck does, and then my deck's going to draw damage, and then I'm going to end the game. Whereas when you're doing a deck that's much more of a toolbox, like Tempo Rogue is, like it's very difficult to get a handle on when you're supposed to play for board, when you're supposed to push damage, because your deck kind of does a little sprinkling of both.
It is hard for me to express how much I dislike this turn. I do not like the Waggle Pick here.
Okay.
You have a Henge Clan Thug online. It wants you to attack with your weapon and get bigger. The Waggle Pick, when it dies, returns a minion to your hand. Like, you're doing reverse progress here, I feel like.
Sure.
If Bozzzton goes with Pharaoh Cat last turn, and he finds a class reborn, he gets to SI7 Vendetta and attack face.
Yes.
If he goes with Pharaoh Cat and fails, he gets Blink Fox, Vendetta, and attack the SIN, and preserve the Henge Clan Thug without having a Waggle Pick in hand. That Waggle Pick timing wants to hit with Leroy or with damage on board for a finish. And he's accomplished neither of those things now. I feel like Bozzzton may have just pushed himself out of this game now. I don't see him getting tempo back with this hand. Like, he may have a couple turns of it, but I don't know if he's going to get there in time with this.
So many options.
See the kind of sticky position he's put himself into.
If this doesn't return the Thug, you're in a much better spot. But I think you took a big risk there with that Waggle Pick.
It's absolutely a big risk. You saw it was the Fairy Dragon straight away as well from the green border that came up. Bozzzton now just considering various options, whether he wants cheap combo activator in hand, whether he wants a 3/2 Fairy Dragon on board, which I'm very much in favor of having a 3/2 Fairy Dragon on the board.
Thinking Flame Strike, thinking Blizzard.
My opponent,
Rhino the Relicologist.
my opponent wants to Flame Strike next turn. I'm kind of okay with that. Rhino is the one to be worried about for sure. I don't think you win too many games against Mage by being timid.
Well, Jarla's now in kind of a tough spot. So Bozzzton succeeding on the waggle pick, I mean, you do get a big payoff for that one. So that could have just been something he was thinking about too, was making the straight up play for tempo right now is good, but I probably just need something better if I'm going to win the game. I think it's a reasonable way to take it that line. Ooh. That's a reborn.
Yep. I think this is what I was worried about as well when Bozzzton chose to pay respect to Rhino on the previous turn and just not give him the perfect 10 to be able to take care of. Is you just open up these kind of situations where Jarla can say, all right, I'll just play stats on the board. Now, Bozzzton might think he's fine in that scenario because he still has this Vendetta that he's saved for a number of turns. Instead getting the value out of the waggle pick. So he might be less scared of Jarla just playing stats on the board because he feels like he can tempo swing against that, in which case playing more heavily around removal makes sense.
Two for 3 on Wrapped Golem.
Yeah, Bozzzton was just hitting Generous Mummies last week, and he's just hitting Wrapped Golems.
Everyone was just hitting Generous Mummies last week. Like every week there's a new reborn mascot.
Yeah. Now, is there a reason for this Fairy Dragon not to be in play?
If I didn't play it last turn, I'm going to wait.
I don't see the logic in that.
So he's thinking about AoE specifically.
Yes.
If you don't see AoE, I think you're going to win.
Yes. Well, I mean, no. I think that's the part where I don't necessarily agree with you. Like, okay, Flame Strike's there. It doesn't, like, if you get Flame Striked on this board, you're happy. You have a 6/2 Thug that's still attacking next turn. So I don't care about Flame Strike. Rhino the Relicologist, you've overloaded the amount of damage that he does anyway, so the Fairy Dragon is just additional to add. The only card that's AoE that punishes you for playing that Fairy Dragon is Blizzard. You want to play around 1 card out of 30 when you're the aggressor?
It's like 1/2 punches as well, too, right? Like Frost Nova into stuff. Like you just, I mean, I can see the value of this being a combo activator.
He has 7 mana, and he has another Fairy Dragon in hand.
Look,
he has an Underbelly Fence in his hand.
I want to play it as well. I'm just trying to find justification. I already hard criticized him on turn 4 with his play. Like, I'm trying to find something that brings some light to the situation.
Sure.
And this 1/2 punch from Jarla, I think, was really smart. The Conjurer's calling to spread the stats on the Henge Clan into Frost Nova, and now has the Flame Strike set up.
Flame Strike after.
And this is where the Wrapped Golem comes in. And just a big reborn thing versus Flame Strike means that you connect for 7 more damage next turn.
Yep.
That's a major turn.
Yep.
And if that was Generous Mummy, you wouldn't get that turn. The Flame Strike would come in, and then they would ping off the 5/1 body afterwards. So Wrapped Golem is now officially the best reborn you can get this week.
I mean, it's officially better than Generous Mummy, and it still was last week, and it will continue to be next week.
Last week, that was not true. Everyone would have lost with wrapped Golems. And Jarla shakes his head. Look at it. He's like, come on, Wrapped Golem, really? Losing to an arena card?
And I will certainly pay respect to the fact that Bozzzton's line has saved himself a Fairy Dragon here.
Combo activator as well.
The first turn, I argued he could have played it where it was vulnerable to Rhino the Relicologist. It would have got to attack that turn.
Witchy Lackey on the Wrapped Golem!
It would have got to attack that turn and push 3 more, but it wouldn't have got to attack on the second turn that I advocated playing it. So definitely in this particular world, Bozzzton's probably come out ahead by holding on to it.
Bozzzton just read that card. Did you see his face? He was like, what does this do?
I mean, I don't blame him.
Death Rattle, make 2 2/2s, which each have Death Rattle, make 2 1/1s.
Yep.
So
Now the name of that card,
options.
Splitting Fester Root. God, I knew that. Thank you, spectator.
I must choose soon.
Just keep chipping away. Jarla needs some help.
He does. Does he need help from Caligos, or does he need help from Power of Creation, though?
I was thinking help from perhaps Stargazer Luna.
Sure, that is a third option.
Fate of the world.
I think finding a blizzard or something this turn could be critical. Yogg!
Well,
Puzzle
that'll do
Box of Yogg-Saron. Okay.
time to let the fates decide, I guess.
Well, you can see Jarla's face, like, yeah, well, I guess.
Yeah, there's no other option. Unless he just really wants to rip the Power of Creation and look for safeguards or Sunwalkers. Yeah. Just get it done.
Ooh, that's big. 5 extra armored right off the bat. That's big.
Okay. Ugh. Halfway there, he still needs a lot more help.
Yeah, that one wasn't so good.
Okay.
Da-da.
All right.
Almost.
Another swipe, please, dealer.
Almost.
Just one more swipe.
Almost.
One more swipe on the
Mark Nature.
Caligos. On the Caligos.
No. 5 health to your hero. He got 10 extra health. Bozzzton can't believe it. 10 extra
3, 6,
health.
7, 8, 9, 10. Yeah, that prevented lethal with the Leroy, right? I think.
3, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. I'm counting 21 if there was no counter spell there.
Well, that's unfortunate.
Wow.
To be fair, like, I don't necessarily want to class that as unlucky for Bozzzton. Like, he still has a vast majority of his board after the puzzle box went off, which I think you're happy with most of the time.
I think your opponent getting 10 extra health and you having lethal otherwise is pretty darn unlucky. It's not like the worst thing in the world, but it's just like a check mark. He just keeps getting into the weird spots. Just gotta deal with it. Don't know if he can this game.
Choose soon. How much is this worth to you?
He checked the counter spell. I was so worried about that. I was just watching the sequencing and I was like, please check it. That is super important. That actually gives Bozzzton a way to win the game now. That may take away Boston's way to win the game now.
Oof.
So lead with Power of Creation. See if you get a mech.
Whoa, 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 whoa. You're not flame striking this turn? Surely you just Zilliax, you heal up, and then you flame strike and you clear the board.
All right, it's pretty good. What if you Flame Strike and use Zilliax with no attack? Then you die to Sap, Leroy? Okay.
I think you take the heal.
So take the heal and the card.
Oh, okay, yeah, you can get Lunas in there as well. Yeah, this makes sense. I didn't even look at Luna.
Yeah.
So now, with the door closing for Bozzzton, I want to go back to it. That first Fairy Dragon would have got to attack. The second one didn't. The second one would have got Frost Nova'd, even if it got played on the second
That
turn.
first one still attacked.
No, you didn't play it.
No, we played it later and it connected.
Right.
That's still 3 damage.
Right.
He got 3 damage to that Fairy Dragon. If you played it earlier, he would have had opportunity for more damage. But that Fairy Dragon connected.
Yes.
It still got 3 damage in. Regardless of when he played it, it still got in 3 damage. He lost this game because of Puzzle Box of Yogg-Saron.
All right, sure. Nothing further to add then. If you want to just blame it on that, we'll stop analyzing Hearthstone.
Look, if we're going to analyze the Fairy Dragon spot, he connected with that Fairy Dragon. It still dealt 3 damage. If he was 3 off lethal before the Puzzle Box Yogg-Saron, that I don't know. And if that was your point, I apologize.
Bozzzton is doing what he can. But what he can here is not that much. All right. If you ever needed something to signal that this was not your game.
Myra's into Eviscerate. That's the last one. This is it.
Yep.
This is the one. It would be a 10-card Myra's, and there's one Eviscerate in the deck. That's not Counterspell.
That's not Counterspell.
If you had one draw, Eviscerate by itself won't work. You need to combo it.
You see Bozzzton just throwing up the prayer hands. He needs some help here. He needs the dealer on his side. He needs one outer into one outer.
Oh! Oh! No way! No way!
Check number 1, it wasn't Counterspell. Check number 2, one of these has to be the Eviscerate.
No way!
I'm out of cards.
Evil Miscreant, double Kobold Lackey.
Yep.
You can't. Well, you have to backstab first. Okay.
Wait, what? Why do you have to backstab first?
You have 10 cards in hand.
Oh, good point.
So keep it calm. The odds got worse, actually, because it's 1 in 6 instead of 1 in 5 from before the set. Nope, Blink Fox and Hench Clan Burglar are not doing it.
Incredible.
There is a 2-drop Leper Gnome now.
I give up.
Nope. All the outs finally smashed away for Bozzzton. And again, like, I don't know where you stand on, like, is that lucky, is that unlucky? Like, he found the Myras, which in itself was a 1 in 16, and then whiffs on the easier part, which was just one of the next 10 cards being the Eviscerate.
It's both.
Like, is it fortunate that he found the Myras in the first place? Is it unfortunate that he misses the Eviscerate?
It's obviously fortunate he finds the Myras. He's like 1 in 16. It's unfortunate he misses the Eviscerate because once he has the Myra spot, 2/3 of the time he finds the Eviscerate there. There is 15 cards left in deck, and there's 1 copy of Eviscerate in the deck.
Yeah.
So the question in my mind is, talking back to the burn point, how important is the burn and how much of it do you need? Like, you obviously need minions, we saw that, but you need finishing potential as well.
It was a ridiculous game. Like, from the puzzle box, again, the puzzle box was randomly discovered from the Caligos, which then, has to do something for Jarla. I would still argue that it can do more to the board there as opposed to just healing up, which still gets him out of it. Like, 10 spells on average interacts with that board in a reasonable way. A lot of the damage that he did throw at minions just ended up splitting the 4/4 in half over and over again, which wasn't removing damage from play anyway. So I think on average, a puzzle box keeps him alive that turn anyway. But then after that, the game just snowballed into chaos for Bozzzton. And I think Bozzzton will certainly go away from that, as you were saying that he's run below average so far in Grandmasters Season 2.
Yeah, indeed. All right, well, let's get a winner's interview up and ready. Jarla, can you hear us?
Yeah, yes I can. What's up, guys?
Whew, congratulations on that win. That third game was a barn burner. And I want to ask you straight away about Puzzle Box of Yogg-Saron. You're one of the players who didn't include it in your list. Soddle and I have very much been in the camp of include that card in your deck. So talk to us first and foremost about the Mage deck, how it's been post-balance patch for you, and why no Puzzle Box of Yogg-Saron.
Yeah, so basically, I think the puzzle box is super good card overall, but I needed my mage in case they protect their warrior. So, and the puzzle box is not great against warrior, I think. So yeah, I ended up submitting Mage without puzzle box in the end because I wanted it just for warrior, but it ended up being I had to play it against Rogue, and yeah, against Rogue I wished I had my puzzle box in, but I discovered it. But so yeah, it did its job.
How has Mage been overall for you in the balance patch? You know, obviously Luna's Pocket Galaxy and Conjurer's Calling getting hit changed the power turns of the deck by quite a big margin.
Yeah, I think the deck is still alright, but I wanted it mainly for the warrior and druid matchup. Against the rest of the field, it's not that great, especially against Bozzzton. He had like a really aggro lineup, and I decided to ban warrior against him in the end, so my mage wasn't that great against him.
So you ended up bringing Priest as well after the nerf. Is that just something that you're trying to target Druids with, or is it just you have a lot of faith in the deck still after the patch? Like, what's going on with the Priest?
Yeah, it was mainly against Druid as well, but Bozzzton didn't bring Druid, so it was kind of mech against him. And also, after the patch, I think the extra arms is still fine, but maybe just as one-off.
And so coming into this week also with the balance changes, were there any decks that you really wanted to play but couldn't fit into a lineup? Is there anything you've been experimenting with?
Yeah. I wanted to practice the new Quest Shaman, but I didn't have time for that. But I think it's like the new deck that is coming from nowhere. I think it will be alright. We'll see how others perform with it. I think it's like the sleeper deck there.
Anything else?
Nah, that's all from me.
All right. Well, Jarla, congratulations on your win. This is a much better start I think you had in Season 1, and it's looking pretty good so far. So congratulations, and look forward to seeing you play this week.
Thank you. Have a good one, guys.
Thanks, Jarla. I will.
Thanks,
I'm
bud.
sorry I got hyphy in that game. I just, if we're, it's going to happen sometimes. I'm sorry.
What?
I got hyphy on you about the fairy dragon thing.
I'm very confused now. I don't know what you're apologizing for.
The fairy dragon thing. I got all hyphy about it.
I know you're a very belligerent and angry man, Admirable. You have to work a lot harder than that to do something that you have to apologize for.
It felt aggressive is all.
You always feel aggressive.
I
What
sound,
else is
we've
new?
talked about it. I sound aggressive a lot because that's the nature of my resting voice.
Yep.
But I'm not typically that way. And that one, though, I definitely was.